more often than not, the thing that makes RFIs go away is you do some horse trading. Right? You're like, I will not submit this RFI if you do that thing, right?
These are true stories
of the shared pains
facing designers,
builders,
inspectors,
and operators
on our quest to
streamline collaboration
in the digital age. Find out what happens
when industry and technology
stop playing nice
and start getting real.
We
are the Construction
Progress Coalition.
And this is the Shared Pains Podcast. Welcome to the Construction Shared Pains Podcast. My name is Sasha Reed, and as your host, my role is to help all of us gain a new perspective on the systemic changes that are needed for design and construction to thrive in the digital age. In episode 3, we focus on the Design Change to Impact Challenge presented by Procore, held during the 2018 Open Integration Summit. Here to break down the construction technologist perspective on this shared pain is CPC's Thought Leadership Chair, Dan Smamillo.
At the Walsh Group, we do a lot of work with varying contract types that can be extremely chaotic with design iterations, document management protocols, and various stakeholders, which can cause a tremendous amount of delays and unforeseen conditions, especially when dealing with large infrastructure construction. I remember a time that we used a HoloLens to effectively transmit a change to a structural steel package. We had the original revision in HoloLens, and then all the revisions in the design change were highlighted in red, and the new additional steel was showed in red. So it visually allowed us to show the owner that change, but that took time to really design that out and show those changes to effectively transmit to the owner and to the designer what they're truly asking of us. Many times tracking the design change costs and impact to the schedule, it's a part of doing business. A lot of the times when we're tracking those costs, we need to really understand how long is it really going to take us to review? Does it take us months, weeks, days to review these design changes? And how effectively can we review these, get them out to the field to our subcontractors, have them review it? Tracking that time it's a necessary evil. We need to understand these changes to effectively build these projects.
The process is fairly simple. Digest, debate, decide, and deliver. First, we'll digest the root causes of these late design changes. Then we'll debate how to overcome the incentive barriers and avoid the jurisdictional roadblocks that have plagued construction productivity for generations. Together with our industry and technology perspectives, we'll provide you, the listener, with just the right amount of context, resources, and strategies to decide when and how to have these crucial conversations to deliver win-win solutions to your fellow project stakeholders. Here to help guide us through the perspectives presented on this episode is CPC's Executive Director and roving reporter, Nathan Wood.
Thanks, Sasha. When we were down at Bluebeam XCon in Austin, I sat down with...
My name is DJ Phipps. I am with Excel Construction. I'm the Director of Construction Technology. Been in the industry for over 20 years now. And I've got a passion for finding ways to integrate technology into workflows and kind of make the lives of our people a little bit easier.
Since then, I've managed to catch up remotely with...
Hey, this is Myles Martin. I am an architect in New Orleans and the principal of M3 Design Group. I also am the founder of a AEC-specific co-working space hub here in New Orleans.
Representing the trade contractor perspective is...
Travis Voss. I'm the technology manager for Mechanical Inc. And that was really before this construction technologist term came out there, but I would see myself as a construction technologist. We talk about construction seeking a problem. So if I keep a library of possible solutions, and then when I find a problem, I can connect the dots there.
And our good friend who needs no introduction, but we'll do it anyway.
Kris Lengieza, currently the Director of Marketplace for Procore. Formerly spent the last 15 years of my life in the construction industry and really started to get involved with CPC when I was at Styles as the Vice President of Operational Excellence.
And to provide a slightly more historical perspective on Procore and their impact on open integration adoption in the AEC industry, I got to catch up with...
My name is Josh Newland. I work at Procore Technologies. I used to work for Excel Construction here in the Bay Area, and I'm still a construction guy and a builder at heart. I started at Procore on our product team, working with our R&D team, and back then Procore was 61 people, and now we're cresting 1,300, so things have changed a lot, and I'm actually in marketing at Procore right now, and we'll talk.
Not surprisingly, it was Josh, the marketer Newland, that succinctly broke down these shared pains at the root cause of this CDX challenge.
If you do kind of just a process diagram and you take out the TLAs and you say, what are we trying to do here? It gets a lot more simple, and you can kind of get, 5, 6, 7 steps that almost everyone says, yep, that's my process. But then the moment you start putting in the TLAs and kind of the specific company stuff, it gets a little messier, and it's where the software guys have trouble, trouble pleasing everyone because people are so ingrained in the way that they've done it at their company in their software.
Okay, hold on, Nathan. Before we jump further into the interviews, can we cover some of these TLAs or third letter acronyms?
You mean 3-letter acronym? You didn't receive a 3-letter acronym TLA handbook when you first showed up to Bluebeam?
I did not.
I did when I first showed up to DPR. It was great. I feel like most engineers at GCs receive one because that's part of what it means to earn your stripes in this industry is knowing your TLAs.
Let's actually step through some of these so that as the listeners are hearing these perspectives, they actually have some context for it. So let's start with Tier 2 design communications. RFI.
Yes, the request for information, our favorite topic from last year's Open Integration Summit. DJ and I got into a good debate about the RFI and really what makes it valuable and also what makes it not valuable.
You were in the base, so there's a lot of things that's quote unquote design build, but it still has some RFIs or some other stuff. And the pitch on the design build process is to at least reduce the number of RFIs. But I've seen design build jobs that have a significantly high amount of RFIs because the documentation or some of the other stuff wasn't clean.
But you realize what you just said. You said a more collaborative delivery contract should have less questions.
Correct.
Well, where's the logic in that, right? And we forget sometimes that we're saying that.
Well,
we're saying that an RFI is just a question. Why are we saying that we want to have less questions? We do want more certainty, but you don't get certainty with less questions. You get certainty with more questions, right?
But you're right.
It's more of a timing thing, right?
It's a timing thing, but questions happen when you're actually talking to each other.
And depending on where you sit within the project chain of command or focus, you may or may not receive the memo. Okay. ASI.
The architect's supplemental information, which means I should quickly defer to our architect's perspective.
Before, when we were drawing and drafting out plans, we'd hit milestones within the AIA contract documents. Things like when we're in the design development stage, you have an owner sign off, which means the floor plan's getting locked down. And then you enter the construction document phase. And inside the CD phase, largely floor plans weren't being manipulated. Global changes weren't being made at all. But now that Revit came in and powered us up and having a parametric modeling tool where the client can actually watch you move a wall. Now changes are, I'm not saying they're encouraged at any and all times, but the lines have certainly blurred. And architects, we are guilty of not saying no to clients. We want to be a client pleaser just the way the GC does. So when a change is thrown at us late and asked, can we do this? We always say, yes, sure. We want to do this. We want to make this change for you. We'll work with the contractor, and the contractors largely, hopefully, in the room and nod their head. The problem is that we are all failing at notifying the owner we can do this at this cost and this time extension to the job. So that change gets made and it gets formalized. It's issued out as an ASI or a CCD, depending, right? ASI is supposed to state that there shouldn't be a cost impact to the project, while a CCD is right that change to the contract so that you formalize it as a contract change.
Yes. Okay. So let's do that one next. CCD.
Yeah. So a CCD, as Myles was talking about, is a contract change directive. So that's really a similar communication from a design professional or an owner, but it's basically saying we know there's going to be a cost. So, tell us what that cost is. It makes everything a lot easier. I think we wish we did a better job of separating ASIs from CCDs, but more often than not, they all really RFI responses, ASIs, and CCDs often all get lumped together. As DJ explains,
sometimes there's a change event that has to happen, and emails and some of that other stuff for conversations are great, but the contractual mechanism for that to happen is the RFI. And so the RFI could be a confirming RFI. The RFI could be, this is a big change, I need you to actually confirm it contractually. And then from there, if it's a change event that has cost and time associated with it, then that's when you go into the RFQ.
What is an RFQ?
Yes. Well, depending on which phase you're in and other things. But in this context, we're talking about the request for quotation. Travis explained how, as a trade contractor, he wishes there was more transparency in the RFQ process.
If we could really wrap our arms around it and really push for this internally, where we come with those RFQs, we come with those cost impact changes and everything, and it becomes much more of a, instead of pleading your case and arguing about it, you're just like, here's the numbers. We've tracked this all the way through. Here's a change in the BIM model. This is what it is. And then, you're probably going to still have your going back and forth. That's just the nature of the beast. But it makes it a heck of a lot easier to make your case if you have all the data lined up in a clear and concise fashion.
And talk us through a PCCO.
And this one was one that was on the board that I'll have to confirm with the guys. I believe it is a potential cost change order, or even a PCO. The next one or potential change order. But both of these are really in the same bucket, and a lot of what Josh Newland was talking about of all the different names for really the same thing.
Okay, and then our final one that was discussed for the tier 3 was COR.
And change order request, frankly, another acronym for the same thing.
I'm seeing a theme emerge here.
Sure. Because that is, at the end of the day, what allows those trade contractors at GC to do that work and be paid that additional dollars that they're due for the impact that they received.
The perspective of our world in this, the specialty contractor, where we're frequently working with many different customers on many different projects, and not all of our systems tend to talk to each other. So we've talked a few times about how sometimes we're hesitant to even standardize on our own stuff internally, because it just takes too much work to put it into all these other various systems that we're told that we have to work on various projects. So,
but you may be surprised to learn that our design partners also share in this pain.
Much as we can, in our specifications, try to steer the contractor to use a PM software that we want, but we also understand that construction companies are set up and they have their choice select software. So then all of a sudden, architects, we could be dealing with a half a dozen different types of PM softwares spread through our different projects. Without kind of common data environments and CDX types of information, we can't bring those all back to our kind of global database.
Exactly. And when those things happen, project stakeholders have to get creative.
We are in Texas, so I'll bring up a term that I've seen happen more often than not. The thing that makes RFIs go away is you do some horse trading. Right? You're like, I will not submit this RFI if you do that thing, right? I mean, that's...
And for those who wish to get rid of RFIs or RFQs or PCOs, Kris reminds us that
change is the only constant. It's going to continue to happen. It doesn't matter how good we are at design. It doesn't matter how good we are as contractors. There's always going to be something that's going to drive a change.
DJ really hits at the heart of this contract dilemma, because
we were realizing, trades have their own management platform, right? The GCs have their own management platform, and the owner has their own management platform. So now you have 3 different silos of data that people are entering that in each time they get something like that, and there's no CDX.
Regardless of which collaboration tier that question resides in, the real shared pain ultimately comes down to
getting them back in a timely fashion. And the other thing was, a lot of times an owner required you to put something in their format, but your system didn't output it in that way. So they were tracking it on their side, we were tracking it on our side, and there was always a delay in getting the response back that we needed.
Yeah, obviously a very critical piece, but I could see how in the heat of the project delivery that can get skipped. All right, so from here, let's jump to tier 4, which is owner approval of change. So approved CO.
Yeah, really, once that PCO, that potential change order gets approved, it becomes a CO, a change order. And really the next one there, which is more important, the NTP, is that notice to proceed, which is all about the contractual release of work to be installed and paid for. Kris talked about the difference between approving data versus approving documents.
A lot of the source of the pain was, could we make it so that the information moves over? The document's not nearly as important. What's important is that the data moves over, and then how do we approve it?
Goes back to the conversation of timing that so many of the perspectives brought up through our conversations of the delay that it takes.
As a subcontractor, they never get the response soon enough. So they oftentimes have to make judgment calls on whether or not they'll proceed with the work without the approval, because they know if they don't, they can't meet the schedule.
And that motivational dilemma right there is why hard bid style contracts don't work.
Yeah. And that brings us to some acronyms that really are defined or brought about based on the contract type. So talk us through a DBB.
DBB, design, bid, build, which is the more traditional contract delivery type. DJ helps us understand what an RFI tends to look like on one of these DBB projects.
We have some people who will just submit RFIs to submit RFIs, like dimensional confirmations, material confirmation, right? That doesn't always necessarily need to happen. Was the RFI due to poor design details, or was the RFI due to poor management and QA/QC efforts by the GC? Was it due to the owner just can't make a decision? I mean, there's so many different variables.
But on the other hand, we've got architects like Myles that want to share their design data, but yet it falls on deaf ears.
To actually use the BIM model for pricing and have the contractor use more of the BIM model, right? We're still using things a lot in a 2D fashion where I use the BIM model to press out a 2D set of documents that fits on our standard sheet sizes, then issue to the contractor. The contractor then is probably issuing that out to a subcontractor to solicit pricing. So the instantaneous kind of feedback loop in having that BIM model, which is the single source of truth, which is kind of a unicorn term right now that we're all still trying to chase and get to, it isn't quite readily available.
So long story short, don't sign up for design, bid, build projects.
And so then DB is?
The DB is now getting rid of that bid, the middle B part, and just talking about design build. So it's the DBIA, Design Build Institute of America, created in the 1980s, has advocated for much better integration and contractual alignment.
Yeah, so that actually is a nice tie into our last one, which is IPD.
Yes. Integrated project delivery and true design build are both fundamentally based upon a shared risk and reward between the liable designer and responsible contractor.
When there's a financial incentive for people to cooperate with each other, you'll get a lot more out of it, instead of people saying that you want to be collaborative, but what's in it for me?
Ah, yes, with them. It's clear that the combination of transparency and incentive can lead to some pretty major innovations.
We started to dive into a conversation around, blockchain and recording, things like that. And you could definitely go down that path, but in some way, shape, or form, we need to record the response from the owner that tells us to do the work. And today, most people do that by having them actually sign a piece of paper, whether it be digitally or a hard piece of paper.
So once we solve all these cultural and process challenges, all that's left is the technology, right?
And not to leave us technology folks out, because there are some technology terms that are discussed in the interviews. Let's start with API.
Yes, API was one that I had to get Josh Newland to explain for us, the application programming interface.
So if I could back that up, an API is basically an easy way for systems to talk to each other without worrying about what's in the back end. Take an RFI as an example. Any developer could become an integration partner with Procore, and what you can see with an API is it is a happy public-facing way to pull information in and out of the system. So there's all kinds of code in the back end that builds RFIs inside of Procore that you don't need to know about, but you just know that you can call our API with I'll say a web request for those that know how to make these. And you could say, I want this RFI, and there's a list in the API documentation of all the fields of an RFI that you can pull. And you can pull what you want, you can push what you want, you can create, you can read. In some cases, we will let you update or delete. Sometimes you might not, depending on system integrity.
And of course, PDF.
Yes. Myles is a huge fan of the PDF.
PDFs, right? PDF, portable document format. It is a universal file format delivery that anybody can operate and open. And it's also a milestone catcher in that it's not a live document, which we're kind of struggling with now as everything's moving online into the cloud, is we still need to hit these static milestone reports for capture and for, well, hopefully not printing, but for sharing.
So if we talk about a common data environment, the only way we can export out pieces of that common data environment through our CDX Common Data Exchange is through different open file formats like the PDF, portable document format.
And then the final technology term is IFC.
Yes, IFC, which depending on which side of the industry or area you're in, it could stand for issued for construction. However, in the technology world, IFC stands for the Industry Foundation Classification. So again, very similar to the PDF, it is another content component, an export of that common data environment. Other taxonomies like COBE, the Construction Operations Building Information Exchange, and much longer TLAs that I won't bore you with at this time.
Okay, good. I think that gets us caught up on everything that was discussed in today's episode.
Yeah, and with the few minutes we have left, I guess we'll have to discuss some of those real-world solutions that we have to these shared pains.
Yeah, right. So everything we all seem to always talk about comes back to communication and KAS, right? Keep it simple. Architects spend a ton amount of resources and time building this BIM model that we're using to create our documents to express our design intent and be tied to all of our contracts. What we're still wrestling with largely is the end of the life cycle of that BIM model. It kind of ends with us. We're trying to share models with contractors, trying to show them to the subs, trying to communicate with them 3D spatially, visually about what we're trying to get them to build. A lot of times they just don't care. They don't know what to do with the model. They don't understand how to use the model. They're not trained to look at a model in that aspect. They want to see the 2D plans. So just being able to get the model a little bit more kind of lightweight and in their hands, which is improving now with iPads in the fields and with big monitors in the field. And right now our monitors, right, are being utilized to pull up the RFIs and the submittal logs, but we want them to do more. We want them to throw up the floor plan of the building and every RFI be a dot associated in that room so you can get that kind of heat map effect, but then be able to jump into the 3D model there.
And as much as I agree with Myles, there is a critical component that DJ highlights here.
Like the process, if there's trust in the relationship, you can, have conversations, you can have emails or stuff like that to back it up. But I also see the perspective of, somebody who's done that before and not had an RFI and then been burned on it.
So if we can all agree that project coordination is chaotic, we can begin to start dealing with that complexity strategically and tracking it digitally. Or can we?
If we look at this, it's all about information and information flow. And I think one of the places where construction has a tougher time than someone like manufacturing, when we look at the productivity curves, is with construction, a job site now and probably still into the future for a while is basically controlled chaos. And anyone that's been on a job site knows how true that is. But with a typical job, if you've got a general contractor, an owner, a handful of the designers and engineers, but then 30 or 40 subcontractors out on the job site that each have their own people and personalities. You've got on even a normal size construction project, 50 different companies that are intricately involved. You're trying to keep on the same page which I think is different than other industries that have one or just a couple companies that are really trying to get something built. Let's say we take an RFI, and an RFI generates a design change. And this is something that I myself have personally done wrong, or in the past, I guess done wrong, being I forgot to include all the right people. And it's always the fire sprinkler guy. But anyway, so we get a new reflected ceiling plan, maybe a register in the ceiling moves. And I look at that and say, okay, I got 50 subs on this job. I'm going to take this detail response from the architect and I'm going to send an email to 50 people. I'm going to probably BCC them all so that one doesn't reply and say some stupid thing that everyone else is going to see. And then I'm somehow on my own going to try to figure out how to track which of these 50 people has replied to me, and if they have a cost impact, what stage of negotiations am I with them, and who do I still need something back from, and did I actually make sure everyone knew? And what you see a lot of people do, and what I've done in the past is you say, you know what, I am pretty sure I know who this affects and who it doesn't affect. So I'm just going to send this to the 3 people I think it affects. And then you wind up forgetting about that 4th guy, which is always the fire sprinkler guy, who, 2 weeks later sends you an email saying, when the hell did you move that register in the ceiling? I'm going to have to move this pipe or move this sprinkler head. You're like, crap. To try to save myself and people time and headspace, I didn't share this information with this guy and now we got a problem.
But I think at the end of the day, we have to separate the roadblocks that are out of our control from the barriers that are within it. If you're a trade contractor, there's a surprising number of variables that are actually within your control.
I think more and more that one of the benefits of being a contractor like us that does the prefab is it actually, you have real work going on, but you kind of almost have a little lab, right? So you can set things off. I mean, that's the benefit of prefab anyway, right? Is it's safer, it's a controlled environment and everything like that. So you can start to apply these metrics. You can start to test things out in more of a controlled environment. And when you have that process tested and out, then you can push it down the rest of the way. You can push it into your QA, QC, down all the way out into the field. And hopefully you have some proven methods that translate well to that, because they're different. They're different jobs, they're different types of work, but in the end of the day, you're still welding pipe, you're still hanging duct, you're putting hangers. There's still going to be similar ways to track that kind of data. There's going to be, you have to have those first adopters. You have to have those people that see the value in it and say, we're going to take it on for ourselves to prove to the rest of the world that this is worth it. Mm-hmm. And we've through the CPC and in COSA and with just the dealings, informal, I would almost call them informal peer groups, but they're, with GCs and engineers and people from different levels. I think we have a good core of these types of companies, including the technology companies that see the overall benefit that we're going to get out of this. So yeah, we need to start pairing up with these people and say, look, we can make it work.
Looking long term, Kris gave us some insights on what's possible with data analytics and forecasting as we become more comfortable sharing our data and measuring to learn rather than to blame.
So by getting more and more digital and getting more structured in the way that we store that information, that allows organizations like CPC or McKinsey and those to research that data and then technology companies to use that data to build machine learning algorithms to predict where potentially there may be a change order coming. Like everybody thinks of machine learning and they think of very, very advanced things. But if you're a Google or a Gmail user, you've probably noticed recently that Gmail's starting to complete your sentences.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love that feature.
So that's
really efficient.
People don't understand, but that's machine learning.
Yep.
That's looking at all the emails that you've written. That's looking at all the emails that everybody's written and going, he wrote these 5 words at the beginning of the sentence. Most likely he's going to finish the sentence this way. And with pressing one key, you can type in 5 more words, right? So that's, I think, going to also help us a lot because we'll get better data out in the field when we start to enable people to leverage tools like that. That'll automatically start filling in some of the information for them.
You know, Nathan, as I'm listening to all of these perspectives, I'm almost wishing we could hear the full interviews that you had with each individual, because I'm sure there's more than, what we cut down for the sake of this episode that's relevant and meaningful to the audience.
I know I'm starting to regret our rules of this 25 to 30 minutes for each podcast to, keep it relevant for everyone. But, after talking to the guys, and especially with such great content, we've got about good 15 to 20 minutes with each with each of these folks. And so I think what we're going to do is release some bonus episodes. So if you did hear one of these perspectives that you're like, man, I really want to learn more about Travis Voss or Kris Lengieza or Josh Newland, any of those guys, we are going to release the full interviews for those who do want to listen into more. But we'll continue on our path to make sure we keep this conversation condensed and really relevant to our audience.
Fantastic. And I'm sure we will notify everyone and give them a quick notification of when those are up online. So keep an eye out for that. CPC wishes to thank Procore for sponsoring the Design Change to Cost Impact CDX Challenge. Next episode, look for ways to transform the submittal exchange in the age of BIM and prefabrication. For more information on CPC membership or to participate in a CDX task force initiative, visit constructionprogress.org. Thank you for listening to episode 3 of the Construction Shared Pains podcast, and we look forward to joining you here next time.